The rain had not stopped for 3 days. In the small valley below the Black Citadel, the world was washed in silver mist and cold wind. Every drop that fell carried the weight of a curse, a whisper from the old gods who had long turned their backs on Velrian. Arendor stood by the window of his cottage, watching the rain twist across the garden. Once he had served the king as his court mage, but that life had burned to ashes. Now he lived alone with his books, his silence, and the memory of everything he had lost. It was safer that way. The only sound came from the creak of the old roof and the hum of distant thunder. The rest of the world, the palace, the people, the wars, was a thing he had buried deep in his heart, until she moved in next door. Her cottage had stood empty for years, covered in ivy and forgotten. Then one night, the lamps were lit again and a woman cloaked in gray stepped through the fog. She said her name was Celine, though he had recognized her at once, the queen. He had bowed out of habit, then caught himself, straightening awkwardly. "I have no title anymore," she had said softly, with eyes like tired moonlight. "Please, just Celine." Since then they had spoken only through the garden wall, brief words in the evenings when she tended the withered flowers. He never asked why she was there. She never told him. It was easier that way. One night, while the wind howled and lightning split the sky, she had said something that made him look up from his book. "He grows crueler," she whispered. Her voice was barely a sound. "Even when I am not near him, I feel his anger. It lives inside me." Arendor stared at her over the low stone wall. She looked pale, like a candle burning at its end. He had no words that could help a queen cursed to live in a king's shadow. So he said the only thing that came to mind, a bitter joke to hide the ache in his chest. "You should leave him." He said it with a half-smile, thinking she would laugh or tell him that leaving a cursed king was impossible. But she only looked at him, long and quiet, as if she had just heard the voice of fate. Then she turned away, her cloak catching the rain, and disappeared into the night. The next day, the world was silent. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy and still. Arendor sat by the fire, reading a book he could not seem to finish. He told himself he had imagined that look in her eyes, but then came a sound. 3 slow knocks at his door. When he opened it, he forgot how to breathe. Celine stood there, her hair tangled with mist, her cloak soaked from the rain. In her hand, she held a small trunk, the kind a person packed when they meant to never return. "I left," she said simply. Arendor's heart gave a sharp, painful beat. "What do you mean you left?" "I left him. I am not going back." For a moment he could only stare at her. Behind her the horizon glowed with distant fire, the faint light of the citadel far away but never far enough. "You don't understand," he said. "To leave the king is to break the ancient oath. He will come for you. The curse—" "I know," she said, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "I would rather die free than live one more night in his shadow." Her eyes lifted to his, and in them he saw something that frightened him more than any curse. Hope. He stepped aside, and she entered. The cottage was small, filled with books and the scent of herbs. Arendor lit the fire again and found her a blanket. She sat near the hearth, staring at the flames as though seeing them for the first time. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the quiet crackle of burning wood. Finally, Arendor said, "Why come here? There are safer places than this valley." She looked up at him. "Because you told me to," he froze. "I didn't mean it. It was a jest." "Perhaps," she said softly, "but it was also truth. And I am tired of lies." There was nothing he could say. He felt a strange ache in his chest, guilt mixed with something he dared not name. He poured her a cup of warm tea. Her hands brushed his when she took it, and he felt the faint pulse of magic in her skin, the remnants of the curse that bound her to the king. "You're still tied to him," he murmured. "The bond hasn't broken, I know. It burns when he thinks of me. I can feel his anger even now." Arendor clenched his jaw. "Then he knows you've left?" Celine nodded, her gaze distant. "He will send shadows first, then soldiers, then worse." Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. That night, Arendor could not sleep. He stood at the window, watching the clouds drift across the moon. Celine slept near the fire, her face calm but pale, as if the world itself drained her strength. He remembered the king, once noble, now cruel, his soul rotting under the curse that granted him endless life. And he remembered the queen, once radiant and kind, now trapped in a bond she never chose. When Arendor had served in the palace, he had been the one who sealed that bond, by order of the king. His hands had carved the runes that tied her to a man she no longer loved. The memory still haunted him. Now she was under his roof and he could feel the old magic stirring again. At dawn he woke to the cry of a raven. It sat on the windowsill, its feathers wet, its eyes glowing faintly red. In its beak was a small scroll sealed with black wax. He knew that seal. The royal crest and a serpent coiled around a crown. His hand shook as he broke it open. The words were burned into the parchment as if written by fire itself. Return what is mine, or I will burn the world to find her. Maron, King Eternal. Arendor's stomach turned cold. He looked to Selene. She had woken and was watching him, her expression unreadable. He knows, he said. I told you he would. Then we must run. Now. She shook her head slowly. You don't understand. The curse is not a chain I wear. It's a living thing. It will follow me wherever I go. Then what hope do we have? For a moment she said nothing. Then her eyes softened. You once broke every law of magic to save a dying child. Surely you can find a way to break this. He turned away, unable to meet her gaze. That was long ago. I am not that man anymore. Then become him again, she whispered. Because if he comes, he will destroy not only me, but you as well. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying with it the faint toll of the castle bells. Each sound echoed like a heartbeat through the valley. Arendor felt the air grow heavy with magic, the old kind, the kind that fed on oaths and blood. He looked once more at Selene. She sat by the fire, her hands folded around the cup of tea he had given her, her eyes reflecting the flames. Something within him shifted. Not just fear, but purpose. He had bound her once. Perhaps now he could set her free. That night the rain returned. It fell harder than before, washing the valley in silver light. Arendor stood outside, feeling the cold soak through his cloak. Somewhere beyond the mist he could sense the king's fury rising, a storm of power and sorrow. Behind him the cottage glowed with warm light. He heard Selene's faint voice through the door. Whatever happens, don't regret what you said. He turned, confused. What I said? She met his gaze through the half-open door, her expression calm but filled with quiet fire. When you told me to leave him. The door closed softly, and in the distance thunder roared like a warning. Arendor lifted his eyes to the storm. Somewhere deep within the clouds a shadow moved, vast, winged, and furious. The king was coming. End of Part 1. Hook. As lightning split the sky, Arendor whispered to himself, I joked once. Now the joke may end the world. The storm did not end that night. The next morning, the valley of Velrian was wrapped in fog so thick that even the trees seemed to vanish. The air was heavy, still trembling with the echo of thunder. Arendor had not slept. He sat near the cold ashes of the fire, staring into nothing. The king's message still lay on the table, its words burned into his mind. Return what is mine, or I will burn the world to find her. Those words were not a threat. They were a promise. Selene moved quietly behind him, her bare feet silent against the floor. She looked pale and tired, but her eyes carried a strange calm, the calm of someone who had already faced her end and chosen not to run from it. You should eat, she said softly. Arendor turned, startled from his thoughts. You're worried about food when the king may already be marching? She smiled faintly. Fear does not stop hunger. He almost smiled back. But he couldn't. The weight of what he had done, bringing the cursed queen into his home, pressed on his chest like a stone. He poured water into a small pot and placed it over the fire. The silence between them stretched long and thin. At last, Selene broke it. When I was queen, he never let me near a fire. He said the light reminded him of the gods who had cursed him. So every night I sat in cold halls waiting for warmth that never came. Her voice was soft but steady. The memory seemed to drift from her lips like smoke. Arendor watched her from the corner of his eye. And yet you still loved him once. She nodded. Yes, once. He looked down. Then you are braver than I thought. She tilted her head. Why? Because love is the most dangerous curse of all. Hours passed. The fog outside began to thin. Arendor walked through the garden, checking the wards he had once placed around the cottage. They were old, weak, and half-forgotten. The runes carved into the stones glowed faintly with blue light, but he knew they would not stand against royal magic. When he returned, Celine was sitting at his desk, turning the pages of one of his books. Her fingers traced the faded ink as though she were reading a memory, rather than a spell. You wrote this, she said without looking. Yes, long ago. It's about the laws of binding. Arendor stiffened. That book should not exist. It says that when two souls share one protection mark, their fates are joined. He walked closer. That's forbidden magic. Dangerous and unpredictable. She looked up at him, her eyes catching the dim light. And yet, it might be the only way to keep me hidden from him. Arendor froze. You're asking me to bind my life to yours? I'm asking you to give me a chance to survive. He turned away, running a hand through his dark hair. You don't understand. If I cast that spell, whatever pain you feel, I will feel too. If he reaches for you through the curse, he will reach me. Celine's voice softened. Then we will share the burden. He met her gaze. For a long time, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, and the air between them felt alive with quiet, unseen power. Finally, he said, If we do this, there is no going back. I already left my past behind, she whispered. What else is there to lose? That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, they began the ritual. The cottage was dim except for the glow of a single candle. Arendor drew a circle of ash and salt on the floor, ancient symbols that pulsed faintly with silver light. The air felt heavier with each breath, filled with the slow hum of old forbidden magic. Celine knelt across from him, her hands steady though her heart raced. Arendor took a small knife and cut a line across his palm. She did the same, her blood bright against her pale skin. When their hands met, a faint spark leapt between them, not pain, but something warm and alive. Repeat after me, Arendor said quietly. Their voices rose together, weaving through the air like wind through leaves. By oath and shadow, by heart and flame, I bind my life to yours. Till end or same. Light flared, a deep golden light that filled the room. The runes on the floor glowed brighter, then faded into the wood as if sinking into their souls. Arendor gasped, his chest tightening. He felt her heartbeat, not as sound, but as a pulse within his own veins. Celine opened her eyes slowly. It's done? He nodded. It's done. We are one in the eyes of magic. She looked down at their joined hands. The faint mark of the king's curse still glimmered on her wrist, but now it burned faintly on his too. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. You weren't supposed to share the mark. Arendor smiled faintly, though his voice shook. It seems the spell decided for us. Outside, thunder murmured again, distant, but closer than before. Days passed in uneasy peace. Celine helped him mend the garden fences, feed the birds that nested near the roof, and clean the books that had gathered years of dust. For a moment, life almost felt ordinary, but the curse never slept. At night, Celine would wake suddenly, trembling, her breath short. Shadows would move across the walls, the shape of the king's fury reaching through the air. Whenever she gasped, Arendor felt it too. When her heart ached, his chest burned. One evening, she found him outside, carving new protection runes into the doorframe. His hands were shaking. You're hurting again, she said. He didn't look up. It's nothing. You feel it because of me. I told you. I chose this. She stepped closer. You didn't have to. He turned then, meeting her eyes. I did. Because I once helped create the curse that now destroys you. Her eyes widened. You? He nodded, guilt heavy in his voice. The king ordered me to bind your soul to his. I thought it was only a vow of love. I didn't know it would chain you to his darkness forever. Celine stared at him in silence. The wind moved through the trees, soft and cold. Finally, she said, Then maybe you are the only one who can undo it. He looked away. Perhaps, or perhaps I'm only the one who must pay for it. That night, the storm returned. But this time it was not just rain. The sky glowed red and lightning danced across the horizon. The king's magic was reaching for them. Celine stood at the window, her reflection pale against the glass.
He's calling my name, she whispered.
He knows where I am. Arendor moved beside her, his eyes hard. Then we'll make him regret finding you. He placed his hands on the window frame and began to chant. Light spread from his fingers, forming a shield across the air. The cottage trembled, the walls humming with energy. But then he staggered, clutching his chest. Celine caught him before he fell. What's wrong? He's trying to pull you back, he gasped. Through the bond. And you? If he takes you, he takes me too. Celine held him tighter. Then he will take neither. She placed her hands over his and began to chant the same spell, their voices joining. One broken, one strong, both desperate. The shield flared brighter, pushing back the red light that pressed against the windows. Then slowly the storm began to fade. When it was over, Arendor fell to his knees, breathing hard. Celine knelt beside him, tears glimmering in her eyes. You saved us, he said weakly. No, she whispered, brushing the hair from his forehead. We saved each other. Their foreheads touched for a moment, just long enough for warmth to pass between them. Not love yet, but something close, something waiting. By dawn, the sky was quiet again. Arendor stood outside, watching the sun rise behind the mountains. Celine joined him, her cloak around her shoulders, her hair catching the morning light. Will he stop? She asked. No, Arendor said softly. He'll come himself next time. She looked at him, her expression calm but full of sorrow. Then we must be ready, he nodded. We will be. A moment of silence passed. Then Celine said quietly, Do you regret it? Binding your life to mine? Arendor turned to her, his eyes tired but kind. No, because for the first time in years, I am fighting for something that matters, she smiled. A small, fragile smile that carried more light than the sun itself. But far away, in the black towers of the citadel, the king's eyes opened. His fury burned through the mist and his voice whispered through the wind. If she will not return to me, then I will tear her world apart to reach her.